Hey guys, I have a quick question for you. Have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? If so, well, you might want to consider Anchor. So when Jesse and I first started doing this, we had a lot of questions. We had no idea what we were doing. How do we record an episode? How do we even get it out there to people? And truth be told, Anchor, which is the app we use to record this, made all of this incredibly simple. We are both what you could call technologically challenged, and we can use this with simplicity. So if you've always wanted to start a podcast, just go to anchor.fm/start. You can make a profile, and honestly, you can start recording probably within 5 minutes. Hit an upload button, and it automatically adds it to all these platforms that you listen to us on. So again, that's anchor.fm/start, and you can get started right away.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the Fitness Experiment Podcast. Jesse and I have an awesome episode planned for you guys today. I think you're really going to dig it. This is a fiery one, lots of fitness myths, things that really stir up the emotions in people. I love talking about this kind of stuff. How you doing, Jesse?
Good. Yeah, this is going to be a fun one for sure.
Yeah.
Lots of opinions, and whenever those are involved, emotions get involved, and fun. We're going to come at it from like a research and experience standpoint,
yes,
and not from an emotional approach.
That's right.
That's our goal.
We're not going to try and pick any sides here. We're just going to give you the information, and then you can make the decisions that you wish to make.
Yeah. I have some opening thoughts.
Yeah.
My opening thought is this. So I'm thinking about, like, where do these myths come from?
Mm-hmm.
And then when I ask people, do you know fitness myths? People know a lot of them, but yet there's still things that people believe for real. Like they're actual opinions that people hold and get defensive about and will defend their argument with whatever reasons that they have. The main problem with this is a lot of the information that people are getting is coming from like a journalist sort of perspective. So it's somebody who's writing for, say, New York Times or your local news, like whatever. They're writing their opinions in an article with no backing from science. And then people are reading or hearing. I get this a lot with like grandparents, like older generation. It's like, oh, well, I heard this on the news. Like, well, you got that information from a journalist who may have read one research paper, which may have been awesome, may have been poor, and they may have not read the whole thing. They may have taken what they wanted to take from that article or that research paper and made that a fact. So we're dealing with a big imbalance in terms of information that people are getting through journalism and information people are getting through science. And there's a big disconnect there. So I think a lot of these myths come from people reading or seeing things in the media and taking that as science and trusting. And rightfully so. I mean, you should be able to trust what people are telling you. Right. But the unfortunate part is you can't always do that because it's not always coming from an educated place. I don't think it's coming from there's no ill intent behind it. It's just an ignorance thing in most cases, but you can't be spreading that information. So we're going to try and just science this up a little bit.
And journalists are writing to get reviews. They're writing to get reads, reposts, emotional responses. So I think sometimes they may even intentionally, sometimes write misleading things just to get a rise out of people, just to get more attention and more views. Because any publicity is good publicity for them most of the time, I would say.
Absolutely. Or come up with a crazy article title.
Yes.
That isn't even what the article's about.
Yeah.
That's good clickbait. Yeah. Right? If you're on Facebook, you see an article that's completely outrageous.
Some of the articles out there, yeah. Actually, that reminds me. So before we kind of get into this, I did a talk at the high school in Strathroy a few weeks ago. A friend of mine who I used to train with, but he's a teacher there, he had me in to kind of talk to it's an exercise science class. So he had me in there to talk about the research process, what goes on, how to use PubMed, what a master's is, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. One of the things I got into was how the media journal articles can be so misleading. What I did was I just showed them this headline that I found on the internet. I Googled, I forget what my actual search was, but it was something related to the ketogenic diet, just because it's huge right now. I knew there would be so much crud out there on it.
Yeah.
But one of the first headlines that comes up, it was something like high-fat diet increases risk for diabetes or something like that, like something very blatant. Go into the study, read it, yada, yada, yada. It did reference a few papers. The first paper that it referenced that was leading them to say high-fat diet consumption leads to, it was high-fat ketogenic diet leads to increased risk of whatever. So I went to this first study. First thing, it was a mice study, a study done in rodents. That's where they got their conclusion from.
Mm-hmm.
I then went to the methods of the paper. I looked at what they were actually feeding the mice, what their quote unquote ketogenic diet was. So I looked this up. This is kind of a rule on any scientific paper. They have to include information for you to be able to replicate it. So they had to include the exact details of what the diet was. So I looked that up, looked up the details on this particular quote unquote ketogenic diet, rodent chow, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
The percentage of the diet was like over 90% trans fats.
Oh my God.
Are you kidding me? Like trans fat, that's not ketogenic diet. Trans fats for one, or I believe they've actually been just banned outright in so many countries because their terrifying health risks are so well known.
Yeah.
And then the other percentage of the diet was something else terrible. I don't know, like fats derived from hydrogenated oils or some other crap like that. So it was just, so if you kind of retrace your steps back to that massive misleading headline that God knows how many people saw,
mm-hmm.
most people aren't going to go into the details of this. They're just going to read that, maybe read the first few sentences, boom, form their opinion. From then on, all the searches they do from that point forward, the conversations they have with friends, what they talk about with, family, how they choose things in the grocery store, all of these things are then impacted from that initial misleading headline, which was brought on by a study in mice that was feeding them trans fats.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So it was
that's a great example.
Yeah. So I think, the kids found that one pretty interesting. It was a perfect example of how, if you do like a little bit extra digging, you can uncover some of this stuff. Bit of a tangent to start the episode off, but I think that's a good example of what the media can do.
Yeah. And the intention, like probably the person that wrote that article did exactly what you just said. They saw a study and they didn't look at the methods. They didn't look at that information. They just looked at the conclusion. Exactly. What would you call it? The conclusion?
The
abstract.
Yeah.
Just look at that section, see what they saw. And they're like, oh man, this study was done by this university or this scientist, wherever it was done. And you take it for the 100% truth, not really with a grain of salt. So thankfully there's people like you that will actually check this stuff out and
got nothing better to do.
Yeah. This so what we did to try to get an idea of what people have been hearing in terms of fitness myths, I think this is kind of a biased thing too, because when we ask people for fitness myths, I think most people are giving us stuff that they already know is wrong. Like they've already established in their mind that it is a myth. So we got a few though.
Yeah.
And I'm not entirely sure that they would understand why it's a myth. They just know it's not true. So
or at least know that there's like a lot of debate around it, I guess, at the very least.
Yeah. So we grabbed a bunch of those from our Instagram questions. And then both of us kind of came up with a couple that we deal with on a fairly regular basis, just in everyday conversations with people. I got one that was creatine is a steroid. Interesting.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Rewind back to grade 9, Jesse. I used to make fun of kids who took creatine because I honestly thought it was a steroid.
I think I did the same thing.
Yeah. I don't know who told me it was. It might have been like a parent or friend or something like that. But somebody told me that creatine is bad for me and it's a steroid-like substance. And I was like, oh, I can't do that. That's cheating. Like, this guy's a loser for taking it. Just a musclehead, whatever. And I formed an opinion that I personally spread for about 2 years of my life. So
you
totally guilty.
To the misleading info.
I had no idea.
Sorry.
So
now we're repairing the damage done.
Working on it, trying to get better every day.
Yeah.
So creatine, when it's brought up in conversations around the gym, is usually it's like, oh, I'm taking creatine to get stronger. But then also some people will say, I don't want to take creatine because I don't want to retain water. That's one thing.
Yeah.
And then there's another thing that people are missing altogether, which is like the neurological benefits of creatine. I'm going to let you run with this.
Sure, yeah. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on this. I don't want to, as they say, beat a dead horse.
Mm-hmm.
I did talk at, some length on this topic last week a few weeks ago, but I released it last week. The solo sode, we'll call it, that I recorded when Jesse was away. So if you haven't heard that one and you do want to know a little bit more of the details on creatine, go back to that one, listen to that. I talk about creatine for a good 10, 15 minutes. But that's funny you say that. I think I probably had the exact same impression in grade 9. And then probably in about grade 10, I recall I took creatine for a little while. So my mind was reversed pretty quick, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
But I just remember I think it was like our grade 10 shop teacher. He used to always tease us about it. Kind of like the same reaction that you had.
Yeah.
Because we had this class last period of the day. So we would sneak out from the class with like 30 minutes left in the class, go to our locker so that we could take our creatine and then go to the gym right after school. And he was a funny guy. He'd tease us about what boys doing out there, taking your creatine, taking your steroids. It was pretty funny. It was Purple K is what it was.
Oh yeah, classic.
Yeah, classic.
What was that? Hydro. What one was that?
I forget. I just remember it came in this purple bottle and it was capsules.
That's the OG.
It was popular for a while.
Yeah.
Anyways, I digress again. I'm sorry. Creatine, not a steroid. In fact, nowhere near. I can't even really say where that comparison comes from. It doesn't have any effect on testosterone directly like steroids would. So just to reiterate briefly, I talked a little bit more about the mechanisms last week, but essentially what creatine does is it increases your efficiency to generate ATP in muscle cells. So ATP, primary energy source for your muscle cells, but it's also the primary energy source for the rest of the cells throughout your body. So this includes neurons in the brain. This is why creatine has a lot of potential in terms of neurological health. So I'll get to that in a minute. But first, if we look at creatine in terms of in the gym, muscular performance, that type of thing, this is probably the most well-researched sports supplement there is. In fact, it certainly is. And the overwhelming conclusion is that creatine safely and effectively can increase muscular strength, muscular power. And it does this by, again, as I mentioned, increases the efficiency for muscle cells to generate ATP. So more ATP means more energy for these muscular contractions, these powerful bursts of explosiveness, if you will. So that's what it helps with. The water retention, that can happen, but people see it as a negative consequence, and I'm not sure why. Maybe because they associate that with kind of bloating. I don't think that part is completely accurate. You will retain extra water, but I don't think that necessarily means you're going to look bloated. If anything, it means that your muscles are going to pop a little bit more. And then kind of indirectly, you might actually end up looking leaner because you have more muscle. You're able to lift more weight. You're able to use this increased muscle to further increase lean mass. And then we know that having more lean mass basically acts like a furnace. So having more lean mass will burn extra calories. So kind of like indirectly in the end, you could actually look leaner by taking creatine, even though, yes, you will store some water. But I mean, that's a good thing. Like, you want water in your muscles. That's even a minor dehydration, we know leads to huge impairments of athletic performance across all parameters. And then if we just shift to the brain very quickly, a lot of neurological issues are associated with an impairment of the brain to use glucose for energy. So an impairment of the brain to use sugar, basically carbohydrates, as energy. This is the case with Alzheimer's disease. It's the case with Parkinson's disease. This happens after a concussion, dementia, all of these different things. This isn't the only thing that causes impairments, but with all of these, a common characteristic is that they call this an energy crisis. So basically, the brain is starving for energy. So that's why creatine has a ton of potential for neurological health, is because it can prevent some of this energy crisis. And then just very simply, if we know that the brain has more energy, I think we can all appreciate why that would improve brain health without going into, unnecessary detail.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So creatine is not a steroid.
No.
But it's the most researched and the most promising research of all the supplements.
And there's some, I talked about a few of these studies last week, some super interesting studies, including in humans, about these neurological issues that creatine can improve. It's very interesting. I said last week, I think everyone, especially, I shouldn't say everyone, but I think especially the elderly population could benefit from taking creatine. And I talked a little bit about this previously, but very underappreciated supplement. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a supplement that was given to my grandpa when he was at Parkwood Hospital after his stroke.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
They added it to his...
That's good. I'm happy to hear that.
Well, they added... Yeah, I don't know. Something in his meals. They would mix creatine powder into his meals so that he was getting that during his recovery because it is that beneficial to brain energy.
That's interesting. That's good to hear, though, that it's kind of finally catching up and hitting mainstream.
And it's not just a bro thing, right? It's not just a bro science supplement. Not. This is a supplement that can change lives at all different levels and is something that I think everyone should be supplementing with over some of the other supplements that we're told are totally most important.
Yes.
Like multivitamins.
Yeah.
When you walk into there's some really good supplement stores in this city with some really educated employees. Sometimes, not so much now, but I think more about 5 years ago, this was a question that I got asked every single time I walked into a supplement store when I walked up to the till. It was, did you get your fish oil and your multivitamin?
Right.
Those were the two things that they asked for. What is a multivitamin, Chet? Like what's the point? What's the idea behind it?
It's just to provide all, I do this in quotation marks, all the essential vitamins and minerals that are necessary for our body and brain to function. So I think the idea here in people taking it is that, or at least their intention in taking it is that, hey, I'm not getting all of these from my diet for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. So I can replace this with a multivitamin. And I think that we'll get into this, but I think that there's different scenarios where taking a multivitamin is probably a great approach. And then there's other scenarios where taking a multivitamin is just not the answer and not providing a solution in the way that people think it is. Mm-hmm. So maybe we'll get into those.
Yeah, I just remember in the college days, I did fitness and health promotion at Fanshawe. So I was very much in a group of people that were health conscious, and there's various different athletes in different sports in that class for sure. Animal supplements was like a big thing. So like animal packs.
I remember those.
Those?
Yeah, those were great.
And it was a badge of honor to have your piss like glow in the dark color. But in hindsight, I mean, obviously my body wasn't doing anything with those animal packs if my piss was radioactive, right? Like it honestly, like if I peed with the lights off, I'd be able to see it. It's just the weirdest color of green. Obviously that's not the greatest thing. So, is that an absorption thing or just?
I really don't think that is fully established, that part, as in based on the color of your piss, you can determine whether or not it's a good multivitamin. Definitely though, like I agree. If your piss is neon like that, I think more than likely, obviously, you're just releasing the majority of it. But yeah, there's a whole whack of other factors, I think. But while we're on this, definitely the multivitamin supplement in general, maybe Animal Pack's one of them. I'm not really sure. I haven't looked into it in a few years, but probably over 90% of the multivitamins on the market are completely useless, in my opinion, either because, like we just suggested, you're not absorbing it. Two, the actual amounts of each vitamin and mineral are like non-existent. Like manufacturers will just like kind of sprinkle dust these each individual vitamins and minerals in there just so that they can throw it on the label and say, hey, we've included hundreds of different vitamins and minerals. They're included in this one, take it. But it could be like an amount that's so irrelevant that it's doing absolutely nothing. And then the third one, which makes it most difficult, is the actual form that each vitamin and mineral comes in. It could be a form that your body just simply can't absorb, it can't use, and then that happens. You just piss it right out and you're just wasting your money.
Gotcha. So it would be a situation where multivitamins would be recommended by you?
I think very, very active individuals, and I don't just mean active in terms of fitness, but also in terms of their everyday life, because that would mean that they're also under a lot of stress in their life, under a lot of pressure. Maybe they don't always have time to sit down for the whole foods meal, that type of thing. I wouldn't necessarily like restrict who takes a multivitamin. I think it's more so, it's really based on the individual. Like some people are more willing to take a multivitamin than others. Put it this way, I would never tell someone not to take a multivitamin, but if they're going to take one, definitely inform them about how to find a good one and make clear to them that it's not, we'll talk about this, it's not a replacement for whole foods ever. So this was one of the things I was talking about earlier. Some people take it for all the wrong reasons, and that is bodybuilding Joe who just wants to eat meat all day. Maybe he's on that carnivore diet, which is somehow popular these days. Doesn't eat any fruits or veggies, so just says, I'll take a multivitamin. It's the same thing, then I don't need to worry about eating all the veggies.
Right.
That's an example of when it's very, I guess you could call it misleading. Not the solution, not the fix that you are looking for. But if we are looking for a good one, you really have to look at the amounts of each one, and then, as I mentioned, you have to look at the form that each one comes in. A lot of people, one of the best ones that I've come across is by a company called Thorn Research. Have you heard of them?
No.
They have a lot of awesome products. They're a Canadian company, but definitely one of the best multivitamins I've seen. The individual ingredients and the form that they come in and all of that, it's so difficult to sort through all that. It's something I still need to learn more on.
Yeah. It seems like it's really complicated and not beneficial at all, basically is what you're saying, to take a multivitamin.
I think often, yeah.
It'd be, better recommended to just eat your fruits and vegetables and
Certainly, yeah, that's
let your body do
always
your
the
thing.
better option.
Yeah. So I guess that kind of busts the whole multivitamin thing, right? It's just,
Well, I think everyone just thinks that they need one, right?
Right.
That's the impression I get.
we're told a lot of times that that's what we need.
And I really don't think that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're going to take one, at least take a good one. Don't get the one from Giant Tiger or just the cheapest one at the grocery store.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Scratch that one off the list.
Yeah, we'll cross that one off there.
Just eat your foods,
It's gone.
kids. Eat your foods.
I think the other thing I forgot to mention, when you think of vitamins and minerals, it's not just the actual vitamin or the actual mineral that's important. It's actually how you consume it. So what I mean by that is vegetables are probably the most abundant in a lot of these vitamins and minerals, but the reason they're such a good source is because they're paired with these other vitamins and minerals in a way that you're actually able to absorb them and get a good amount. So that's why the natural source is so much better, right? Like these things are coming from a living species, so you know that they're like working in unison, they're balanced, and then you're actually able to more likely consume that. Because you're not just getting the vitamin and mineral, like you're getting all these other, like the digestive enzymes, all that thing that's actually helping you break that down and then really absorbing it. You can't get that with the vitamins and minerals. It doesn't matter how many additional things they throw in there. It's just not in its natural form. And then again, you're less likely to absorb it. So there's always something to be said about things coming in natural form with things. And the same thing goes for protein.
Mm-hmm.
Protein from an artificial source versus, for example, a slab of meat, because it's existing naturally in that slab of meat. It's coming with all those digestive enzymes, and you're just more likely to absorb it and actually get the full spectrum of nutrients that are in it.
I think there was another supplement one too, the woman's only protein that's being marketed.
Yeah, right.
I think you were mentioning that to me yesterday at the gym or something.
Should we?
What's that?
Oh, I was just gonna say, should we just kind of attack this female issue head on that we were going to bring up?
Oh, sure. Yeah, let's just go for it.
Yeah.
This is a doozy, and it's really big right now. For some reason, it's been popping up. I've seen it 3 different ways in the last week, from this women's only protein to the whole Josh Bridges endorsed training program,
Right, yeah.
which, I mean, to be fair to him, he didn't write the program or the articles or anything like that. It was just something that his name was on because he was endorsing the training program. And then WOD Prep sent out an email on their email blast calling out an article that Ben had read from the New York Times, I'm pretty sure.
Wow.
Don't quote me on that one, but it was a big publication about why women can't do pull-ups. Why women, all women.
This was the title of the headline.
Can't do pull-ups. Why they can't do it.
I think that's a good place to start.
Okay. Myth busted. Just walk into Westland and CrossFit and look around and see all of the women just crushing pull-ups of all different styles. We got strict pull-ups, we got kipping pull-ups, we got butterfly pull-ups, we got muscle-ups, like all these movements that are actually happening. Let me just pull up. I took a screenshot of the email from WOD Prep here that had a list. Okay, these were the reasons from this study why women can't do pull-ups. 1, because women have lower levels of testosterone during training. They typically develop less muscle than men. That has nothing to do with doing a pull-up. In addition, they can't lose as much fat. What? And then 3, I look at a volleyball player and wouldn't expect her to be able to do a pull-up, but I know she's fit. And that's a direct quote from the article. Again, the quote was, "I look at a volleyball player and wouldn't expect her to be able to do a pull-up, but I know she's fit." That doesn't make any sense. Looking at a volleyball player and making an assumption that that volleyball player can't do a pull-up, whether it's male or female, is ridiculous. And just because it's a female volleyball player does not mean that the male volleyball player by default will be able to do a pull-up and the female counterpart will not. It's kind of like, it's one of those things that you read and the honest reaction is, what the actual fuck is going on here? Because none of it makes any sense. And the discouraging thing about this for me, or the most problematic thing about this, is that someone can look at this article and read it and come to that conclusion, or use this article and that as an excuse as to why someone would not be able to do a pull-up. You end up coddling yourself and creating this way of thinking around your abilities that's like, oh, I can't do X because of Z. Like, I can't do a pull-up because I'm female. I can't weightlift because I'm lanky. I can't run a marathon because I'm fat. I can't do CrossFit because I'm not fit. I can't, whatever. You can put A and B together however you want to, but as soon as you create that mentality that is false, it's just a way to coddle yourself and make yourself feel okay with whatever you're at. The most infuriating thing about the whole article for me is that fact in itself. And that is beyond the fact that it's just incorrect, right? Like, it's just not true in any way, shape, or form.
It's totally bogus.
Yeah. It's crazy.
When you mentioned, for example, just walk into our gym, that's a cool point. Sometimes when I'm coaching a class, every once in a while, I'll just kind of, as I'm watching, you think about a lot of different things while you're coaching because you're obviously not talking the entire time. But every once in a while, as I find this happens a lot on squat days, just sit there, watch, and just kind of realize, like, holy shit, these people are strong.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, if an
yeah.
average Joe were to come into our gym who works out, but not frequently, maybe they're just, I don't know, I don't really want to generalize, but maybe they're not as educated on working out or whatever. They're just not exposed to CrossFit, particularly never been at our gym.
Mm-hmm.
I think if they were to come in and just watch a class, they would be amazed at,
right,
just like I said, like how friggin' strong people are. It's impressive.
It is.
It's awesome, actually.
Yeah, and there's no boundary to that, right? In terms of gender or age or anything like that. It's just people are strong, and that's just it. And it's because there's an environment where people are allowed to physically express themselves to the best of their ability, and there's no judgment on that. That's a big difference. I think we can be very harsh on people. Oh, here it is. Yeah, New York Times Magazine article.
New York Times.
Yeah, entitled "Why Women Can't Do Pull-Ups." It's ridiculous. They've never been in. Oh man. Anyway, it's crazy talk. The ignorance that goes behind an article like this is like, you can't forgive that.
No.
This is being published in one of the biggest magazines in North America.
Who, you might have already mentioned this, but I missed it. Who actually wrote this article?
No names were.
Yeah, I wonder
mentioned. Why. Yeah, and I tried to find it on the New York Times Magazine website, and I didn't have any luck finding it. So maybe they got a little bit of backlash.
Yeah, I
from
got
that.
Scared and took it down.
Yeah. I always, when I see stuff like that, I wonder where like the motivation came from for somebody to write something like this. I'm not sure whether the author was male or female, so I can't really touch on that. Regardless of their gender, it's clearly an insecurity thing from them that they're making this assumption that they can't. So it could be someone who is unable to do a pull-up and is jealous of people that can, or somebody who has some sort of messed up mindset that like there's some sort of order of things that are supposed to happen. It goes along with that training program. That was a direct quote that I saw from that was, many strength programs cause women to get bulky in all the wrong areas.
Oh, what?
And I'm like, what are you talking about? Right? Like it's just, it's so, it's, it's laughable to us.
Yes.
It's infuriating also. Like, I'm laughing because I'm actually mad about it. Like, I'm not laughing because I think it's funny what they're saying. I think it's hilarious how ignorant they are, for sure.
That's what I'm laughing at, just the pure ignorance of it.
Yeah. Like, what does that even mean?
I don't know.
It's some person, again, I don't know, male, female, whoever wrote the thing, it doesn't really matter. But this person is using their preference, clearly a sexual preference for them, right? If they're using like an attraction thing, as in like, oh, that person's bulky in the wrong areas, they're not attracted to that, so therefore it's wrong. Doesn't make any sense to me. Instead of we're looking at performance as from a perspective of like what this body can do. What is the capabilities of this body, and how far can we push those capabilities to find the greatest level of fitness, or the most elite level of fitness possible, or the most balanced wellness, or whatever. And that doesn't have a look. It looks like every single person has a different composition, and it doesn't matter.
And it's just such like a personal opinion bullshit statement. Like, they might as well say men or women dyeing their hair the wrong color.
It carries the same amount of weight to me. I agree with you totally.
Because your preference is for those people to have black colored hair instead of blonde colored hair. Like, what are you basing that off of, you know?
It's such a crazy thought to us because our environment is so different. Like, when we walk in to where we train and where we coach, you look around at the bodies and it's like, these bodies are capable of doing things. And that's the focus. And whatever that looks like physically is just a side effect of the work and the dedication that person has put in. Right. And that should be celebrated. It shouldn't be shamed publicly by some person who has no idea what they're talking about in terms of strength or performance, and making an assumption that I give a shit what you find attractive. I don't. And the girls that are reading this or hearing us talk about this and are getting mad or infuriated because it's so ridiculous, they don't give a shit either, because they're not going to be attracted to you, because clearly your mind is a little bit whacked. If you think that's like, it's crazy. It's not, nobody cares what you find attractive, man. Yeah. Don't publish it in New York Times and discourage able-bodied people from being able to do a pull-up. Celebrate them, because that woman that you said can't do a pull-up, if she trains, she's going to do a pull-up.
It's a problem with popular media, I tell you. I'm scared.
Getting fired up.
Yeah. A little lightheaded. Take a breath or two. It's a problem with popular media, though. Yeah. Sometimes I'm concerned with young kids these days just because of what they're exposed to. Instagram, all that bullshit. But
it's bananas. Journalism over science. Crazy talk. Opinions over facts. It just kind of goes hand in hand. Oh, we should probably move on before I...
Yeah, I guess so. But hey, that's one of the things we're trying to provide to you people.
Yeah.
Cut the bullshit.
Yeah. Go do a pull-up with this guy hanging off your back.
Weighted bullshit guy pull-up.
Oh my God.
RX Plus.
Yeah. You're talking about kids. Let's talk about weightlifting for kids next.
Yeah,
this is a little bit less emotional.
We didn't get to but I think we'll come back to that. We didn't get to the female specific protein, but if we talk about,
let's do that now.
You want to?
Yeah, let's just do it.
All right, let's do it. This will be a quick one.
Yeah, I haven't heard of it before.
Hysterical. So I can't think of the name of it, but I have seen this. It's just as it sounds. You go into a supplement store. It's women specific protein. It's marketed to women. It's marketed as, this is the best protein for women. It's not for men. I just think that's laughable because, so for one, I hate, this is the problem. Their marketing is genius. That's the problem. They cover it in pink. They probably have all these images of different women about quote unquote what many women kind of, I don't know what the word is, aspire to look like, I guess you could say. I think that's a safe way to put it.
Yeah, I think it's more of like the media's perspective of
that's a better
the women's
way to put
body
it.
or whatever.
which is a whole separate issue in itself. But anyways, I think this probably comes from that other issue of the fear of bulking up. Women have this fear of bulking up. You know, like, I don't want to lift heavy weights because I'm going to get big and bulky. I think that's where this product came from. Jumping back to the science, completely bullshit. What they put in it is the one thing that I want to focus on is less protein. So, okay, if we think in terms of let's think in terms of body weight and protein requirements. I guess on average, men probably weigh more than females. Based on this, on average, you could assume that maybe some females require less protein than males. But I think the problem with this is it bases their product off of this idea of lifting weights gets you bulky. It's almost like they're offering this product as like a mitigator to prevent you from getting big and bulky from lifting weights, which is, for one, like, absolutely absurd. Anyone who lifts weights knows that you don't just go do some squats and then you wake up the next day and you gain 20 pounds of muscle and you're huge all of a sudden. Like, that shit takes so long.
Yeah.
It takes so long to build muscle, and you're going to see that slow, gradual progression over time. You're not just going to be all of a sudden big and bulky. For one, you're probably never ever going to get to that end, whatever that means, that big and bulky state, because like we said, like, that takes so long to do. It takes so long to build muscle. It's just unrealistic. It's bullshit. It's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. And then back to this product, they'll put like minuscule amounts of protein in this product, like an amount that isn't even going to, it's not going to deliver the goals that a protein supplement is supposed to. It'll put like 10 grams of protein or something in the product, which it's such nonsense. Like, it's hard to even be serious about it. Like,
yeah,
if a female takes 20 grams of protein, like, you're not going to bulk up. It's there to build lean muscle.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's ridiculous. So, kind of to summarize that, the point of this is protein consumption can be the same, male and female. There's no such thing as female specific protein. It's just nonsense.
Yeah. It's all nonsense.
Yeah.
All three of those topics is just, it's ignorance or fear or insecurity or whatever that's kind of driving those arguments or those thought processes. And I mean, we can't do anything for those people other than kind of hope that eventually they decide to educate themselves and not target their market by focusing on a fear focused or just an uneducated approach to things, and maybe steer more towards educating people on how they can be the strongest and healthiest version of themselves, instead of constantly, like, I hate even having to talk about like women getting bulky. I hate even having to talk about it, because it's so, what's wrong with that?
I know.
What does bulk even mean? What is wrong with a girl having muscles? Honestly,
I like that.
Personally. Yeah. So if we're talking like from an attraction standpoint,
that other guy's completely wrong then, I guess.
Yeah, if it's a matter of opinion of what we find attractive, this guy's is wrong just because of an attraction side of things. It's crazy. That's an opinion thing.
Yeah.
That's not what we're going for here. We're going for.
I just hate how people make money because they're marketing a fear,
right? And
not even a real fear. It's such a bullshit fear that comes from false advertising.
It's just false.
So
that's
wrong.
The
problem. Yeah.
It's terrible. Oh, yeah. All right.
Getting heated during these topics, man.
Yeah. Man. CrossFit actually has a lot of really good articles about females in CrossFit and kind of eliminating that stigma as a whole.
Yeah.
I think it's going to take a lot more I try not to think about it too much because I like the little corner of the world that I live in where that doesn't exist. And it's not,
Right.
we don't judge people based on those things. But the fact is that the majority of the population is getting this information right from a very young age about how they should look and how they should feel and how they should train. That's false and based on opinions of attraction from whoever came up with that. And it's not based on fitness and performance and health, which is what our whole goal is with what we do every day and kind of the message that we're trying to get through with the podcast. So it's actually frustrating.
Yeah, sometimes I forget, like you said, that we are kind of in a little bubble. Mm-hmm. You forget that sometimes. You think that everyone knows and sees and believes what we experience on a regular basis, and then forget that, well, there's still this huge majority of the population that has some of these harmful beliefs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's one other thing on the list. Actually, there's more than one.
Yeah, couple. What were we going to talk about before we started talking about female protein?
Yeah, we're going to talk about weightlifting for kids because we're kind of talking about how the message for this opinion is established at a young age for females, where they're supposed to think and feel and be a certain way and of a certain orientation and of a certain attractiveness for some creepy old man that wrote an article. Fucking guy. Weight training for kids. All right, let's talk about it. The most common thing in working with kids and young sports teams and things like that, in my experience, is talking with the parents. Most teams come with the expectation that I'm going to be working on strength and conditioning, and then somehow that always turns into like agility training, like ladders and plyometrics and that sort of thing. And the reason why they're expecting that is because they have this belief that training under load or weightlifting in terms of, so let's say that's any weighted movement, any weight added to the body weight of that child is, or the kid or the teenager included, is weight training or weightlifting in this perspective, right? It's not weightlifting as a sport like snatch and clean and jerk. It's added load to the body through movement. There was a study done in 1983 by the American Academy of Pediatrics that made the statement, not due to research, but due to a hunch because of the fragility of a growth plate, that if you were to add load to a growing person, that load would cause damage to the growth plate.
So was this based on like a study that they did in like cell cultures or something, or this was just like an opinion piece?
From what I've researched, it was literally, there's growth plates. Yeah. They're fragile. We shouldn't add weight to them.
Okay.
That was the whole basis of the argument.
Interesting.
This was in 1983. If we think, let's think about what the state of the fitness industry was in 1983 for a second.
Steroids are great.
It's just different. It was so new in 1983.
Yeah.
When I was at Fan Shower reading a book by Berzicki that was written in the same year-ish, early 1980s, that says squats are bad for your knees. How many times do you still hear that now?
A lot.
How are we still thinking that way? You know what the alternative was for squatting? Leg press. What's the difference?
Yeah.
A body weight or weighted squat compared to a leg press.
Well, yeah, that's
the leg press is better than the squat.
Because another thing that happened in the 80s was like this boom of all these fitness machines, right? That was like the belief that all these machines were far superior.
Mm-hmm.
And now, well, I think that's where CrossFit came from, was we don't need all these machines. You just need your body.
Yeah. There was a shift in the 80s that went from strongman training and weightlifting as main sports for strength, right? Strongman, they were kind of seen as like circus freaks, but it was like super cool for people to go and see them.
Yeah.
And then weightlifting was a sport. It was still, I think it was in and out of the Olympics. Obviously it's in now and it's there to stay for sure because it's awesome.
Yeah.
And CrossFit has only helped increase the interest in that sport, which is a great, it's just a side effect of the movement.
Like the registration has just gone way up through the roof, like higher than maybe ever. I don't know.
Yeah, I would think so. Lots of CrossFit gyms hold sanctioned weightlifting events for qualifying for things. There's one in London halfway through November.
Yeah.
that a number of people from our gym are going to be competing at and from the area. It's awesome. So it was a weird time in the industry because it was going from a performance focus to more of like a marketing focus. Like, how can I sell my equipment? And a lot of the studies done at that time were done by manufacturers of this equipment and how their equipment helps with like joint comfort and like health and decrease injury and yada yada. I kind of compare it to now, like big pharma doing studies for different things to push through drugs. Like there was another opiate drug passed through in the States when they're in the middle of an opioid crisis. What the fuck is going on, right? And it's because it's coming from a company that has a different interest.
Just money driven, yeah.
Yeah, so it was a money driven time in the fitness industry to sell stuff.
Yeah.
So that's where that came from. That kind of gives you a little background into the state of the industry at that time and why something like this could have slipped through without any research. Again, somebody writes an article or something with an opinion that weight training can cause damage to growth plates, and then it just becomes something that everyone goes with. Fast forward. There is a study that was released recently, like 2013, 2014, so fairly recently, by the same academy, so the American Academy of Pediatrics. They had a group I forget the name of the German institute, but it was some sort of strength institute in Germany. They ran a 60-year study on, so that's a long time. That's a lot of people to go through it, and it was on humans. It wasn't on anything else. That's important information.
I always love hearing about these studies because you wouldn't be able to run these studies today because of the ethics.
Yeah. A little different.
Yeah.
So they run a 6-year study. They had a set protocol for these kids to go through between the ages of 12 and 16 was the age range. I'm not going to go into details about what the protocol was. It was good, though. It was sound. Yeah. Everything was good. And they found that kids got stronger. Duh.
What?
Right? Like,
shocking.
Basically, I could summarize the conclusion into kids got stronger.
Yeah.
They did a little comparison chart. It wasn't part of the study, obviously, but it was like a little bottom part of this article that I saw. Just kind of comparing kids' strength training to strength training in adults, right, and why things could get a little bit hairy. Adults gain muscle mass. There's a preoccupation with muscle mass equates to strength and motor control and motor unit activation,
yes,
performance, sport performance, things like that. It's not true. Kids don't have the hormones established in most cases between that age range where it's high enough for them to gain a significant amount of muscle mass. It's just not possible for them. Yeah. So they get these side effects, which is this increased bone mineral density. So it helps your bones. It doesn't make you shorter.
Sounds pretty good.
Okay, so that's good for that. Increased motor performance skills, sport performance, motor unit activation, and it prepares you for the demands of practice and competition.
Yeah.
Positives. There were some instances of injury, but that's going to happen when you're running a 60-year study and kids are strength training. All it takes, I mean, I've injured myself weight training. It's not because
people get
of weight training.
Sport. Yeah.
It's because that's nature of sport, right? Yeah.
People get injured at home getting out of bed.
Exactly. So that's not really an argument at this point. We're talking about the main cause of the argument where weight training is bad for kids, and that's the whole growth plate thing. For those reasons, it's wrong.
What we're saying is it's bullshit.
Yeah. Your kid needs to be strong to be resilient, to hopefully prevent injury. They also need appropriate methodologies for their training, right? So don't just take them anywhere. What this is also, to me, reading it as I'm going through it, I'm like, loading of like controlled loading and say like a back squat or something like that, where we're in a controlled environment. The argument that having a kid do box jumps or broad jumps or things like that, and that being safer than a controlled loaded squat.
Yeah.
Like you think about the forces acting on someone as they're controlling their impact of running or jumping, all these things that kids do on the playground, that to me, if we're talking about like, oh, well, they could get hurt. Yeah, of course they could get hurt doing anything. And those things are not any more safe for that child than lifting a barbell or a dumbbell or something weighted. Where it comes down to is you need to have a coach that can help educate these kids as they go through it to the importance of focus, proper mechanics, mobility, stretching, recovery practices, and things like that. What you don't need is somebody standing up there with a whistle calling a kid slow, go faster, do more, do this, 5 more burpees, right? 10 more jumps, blah, blah, blah. If you don't puke, you weren't trying hard. That's what you don't need. You don't need a trainer. You don't need a boot camp. You need your kids to get educated in strength and conditioning so that they can take these practices and continue them on for their entire life and help break this stigma that we're talking about with this female stuff, right? Like, let's get girls teams into the gym. We have them now and they crush it. They're strong as shit. They understand what they're doing. They're focused. It has nothing to, like, fitness doesn't have a boundary of gender or any. It's like, I'm circling back to it because it just makes me so angry.
Yeah, no, it's good.
If we can instill these thoughts in young men also, it can help educate them to not be dicks when they grow up and say that girls can't do the same thing. I've had groups work back to back. The girls were in there first. The guys were coming in second. These girls are crushing the guys, way stronger at that age because it's just the way it works physiologically at that point. Most of the girls are stronger than the guys are at, say, 14. That's a fact, right? So the guys are walking in, they're like, but they see that and the shock on their face, it's like, oh, maybe that thing that I was told is wrong because I'm seeing these girls crush it right now in front of my own 2 eyes. And like, maybe that guy or that girl or that person that told me that they can't do that, maybe they were wrong because I'm seeing it right now.
I like it. Yeah. Hit the nail on the head, touched on a ton of good points, especially so many points in there that you mentioned that you simply wouldn't be able to study. And just because you can't study things doesn't mean it's not beneficial. So all these different side effects that you're getting from, for example, kids lifting weight, that study showed that if we're looking at growth, no, it's not impairing that. It's not, inhibiting bone density growth and all these different things. And then you touched on all these other side effects that are in the long run actually beneficial that a study can't mention, but it just kind of adds to, for one, the bullshit claim that it's bad for kids. And then 2, it just adds to the long list of benefits, like the teaching of the proper mechanics for a squat and deadlift. If you were to follow someone throughout a day, just watching them do typical daily tasks, putting on socks, putting on shoes, climbing around, you're going to see people have different mechanics, different movement patterns. If you can teach these proper mechanics early in life, you're going to prevent so many issues later in life. I think you could, you can see people every single day go to pick something up and like, it just makes you cringe, like looking at their back, looking at their knees, their hips. And then like, we wonder where these injuries later in life come from. I think so much of that can be prevented. Like just these simple things about how to safely and efficiently pick things up, like all these different things. Another side effect, like motivation, mindset, perseverance, all these things you touched on. Awesome points.
Yeah, for sure that I feel like those need to be the priority when we're talking about health and fitness over all these myths that we were talking about today, right? It's just...
How is that 58 minutes already?
Yeah.
Should we just continue this and finish up these last couple?
Yep. Because we still got some good ones, right?
Yeah, we're going to do that.
All
so
right.
Don't go anywhere.
No, we'll be back.
Hey guys, thank you very much for tuning into this week's episode of the Fitness Experiment podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I know Jesse and I really enjoyed discussing this one. Fitness myths, lots of super interesting stuff. If you're wondering why the sudden interruption, well, Jesse and I actually continued talking about these. We kept digging into more and more myths for at least another hour. So what we decided to do was split this up into part 1, part 2. And so to hear the rest of our discussion, to hear more of these myths, you're going to have to wait until next week when part 2 comes out. And so for now, that is it for this week. Again, thank you very much for all of your submissions. Please continue giving us feedback, reviews, ratings. We love that stuff. Have a great week, guys.